Hello, everyone, and welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions about media and production 24/7. If you're watching on YouTube, you can enter your questions by using the QR code that appears during the course of the show, or by going to askofficehours.global. And remember, once you're there, you can follow the breadcrumbs to what we call Makana, which is the system of Q&A that is putting the questions into the show, and it's how you drive our content every day. In our second hour today, Alex is going to welcome Nick Jushchyshyn from Drexel University. He's the program director for digital media and production there. And we'll get an update on the state of things like Unreal, photogrammetry, and more. And that's in our second hour. Right now it's time for your questions. So let's dive in. Courtney, what have we got today?
Well, first question up here comes from Mathieu Lecomte in Oakland. He says, when traveling with gear and Pelican cases on commercial flights, would you use lock tie or zip? Would you lock or zip tie your cases? Please address theft and safety.
This is something that everybody who has traveled for production has had to deal with. Nick, start us out.
So to be fair, I do what I do because I learned it from Alex, and that is to use color plastic zip ties on it because TSA is going to open or cut through any locks you have. And so the trick is I use one color of plastic zip ties to hold it shut when it goes in, and inside the case, immediately top, as soon as you open the lid, there's a pile of a different color of zip ties. So that way, when I get my bag off the baggage claim, I can immediately tell if this has been opened and reclosed. TSA will also happily re-zip tie it for you if you give them a pile of zip ties. So if I send it in with blue and it comes out with pink, I cut them open right away and just double check that everything is the way it should be before walking away.
Courtney.
I thought about using that method, and I do zip tie my Pelican cases, but I also use a TSA-enabled lock, which has TSA key to open it. The problem with that is a lot of the baggage handlers have gotten a hold of those TSA keys. So, and the problem with putting the zip ties of a different color inside, I just put a colored zip tie that is not a common color, one colored zip tie and a lock. So that, and to open the case, you've got to unlock the lock and cut off the zip tie, which TSA can do. But I don't put replacement zip ties in there because that way, if a baggage handler who gets the baggage after the TSA looks at it could just cut off those zip ties and put them back on. So you won't know if did TSA open my case or did the baggage handlers open it and take everything out. So there's a slight problem with that methodology if you provide them with the different colored zip ties to close it back up. So TSA, I think, will zip tie if they have them available, or they will relock it with your TSA-enabled lock once they close it. But you're still, they will still find a way into your cases.
Alex.
Yeah, this is the infamous picture that ended the need for your locks. This is it. Now, you may be upset that I'm showing you this picture but it's all over the internet. So there's not anything that I need. This happened many years ago, maybe a decade ago, where the Washington Post was doing an article about TSA, and some, genius at TSA thought that he would show them all the keys. But unfortunately, these were largely one-dimensional keys, and it was really easy to build copies of all of them. And these are the only combinations for all of the TSA-approved locks. So the problem that happened after that is that you could put a TSA lock on, but it was just mostly convenience of not having to go through the process of zip tying. And we found that zip tying, exactly what Nick talked about, we zip tie a certain color. I hadn't taken it to the level of another color inside. We mostly just wanted to make sure that the zip ties are neon, so that we can see. It helps us identify our case when it comes out of it, because we're the only ones, or typically now, I'm going to ruin everything, but right up until now, we are the only ones other than Nick that really do a lot of neon zip tying. Usually only zip tie one thing. I don't zip tie like every possible place I could zip tie because you just have to keep it from being opened. And we did find that TSA, if you don't give them something, will typically give you back a clear one. So when you see clear zip ties, you typically see, if you zip tied it, they'll zip tie it, and they typically will give you a clear one back to do that. We find that for the most part, we haven't, knock on wood, I don't do the kind of travel I did before. I don't know if we've ever had anything stolen out of a production case ever. We've had lots of things broken. So TSA repacking things has been the biggest problem that we had. And what we had to learn is not packing things the way we knew how to pack them, but pack them in a way that was easy and clear for a TSA a security officer to put them back appropriately. And mostly the thing you lose are monitors and teleprompters. The teleprompter glass is the thing that gets broken the most often, and it's one of the more expensive things to break. So anyway, those are the things that we looked at there. But we did quickly open a lot of these to make sure that they were there. Now, where we do see theft more often, or where we have seen it, is in personal items. I think part of it is it's very hard to fence the kind of gear that we go in and out with, and so it's just harder. The ROI is not there, and people like us will more typically report it and aggressively go after it. So I think that the lower hanging fruit typically is the stuff that's in your personal bag, and so we were very careful about not putting very much into our personal bags. The one thing that is really important, probably more than anything else, is putting air tags or some kind of tracker in your bags. So we went from not having that at all to having that everywhere, because we could tell. We've had people just pick up the wrong bag, and now we know that it's now somewhere 300 miles away. But we can figure out who that is if we talk to TSA or other things. People can contact them, and it's easier to track it down, even drive up to it and ask them for it. Usually it's not stolen; it's a mistake. And then also when FedEx loses your bags or tells you that they don't know where they are, you can say, well, they're actually in the northeast part of your warehouse by LAX. We can see all of them. They're all grouped together, fortunately. So those are the kind of things that I would say the trackers are probably more important, carefully hidden. And they do make those little beeps, but I think that at this point, I can only imagine that there's just beeps going off everywhere when it comes to this stuff now, because there's so many people putting trackers in their bags.
Not my finest hour. Confession time. About a year ago, I discovered removable zip ties, and I got confused right before a trip, and I used them to close my luggage. That may have been the dumbest single day of my life. Thank God I looked at it. And I thought, what? Why? Oh my gosh! I've used the removable ones. Not a good security. Anyway, let's go on to the next question.
All right. Next one comes in from David Brady in New York City. He says, as a 1Password user with most of my logins behind two-factor authentication, what are passkeys and how do I begin using them?
Alex, help us out.
Yeah, we've started to see passkeys roll out. This is going to be used not just by Apple, but by Google and Microsoft. But Apple is the one that's the furthest out right now. So the most common place you're going to see it is if you'll get the option of using a passkey along with the other possible things that you could be signing up for. So you could be using, you could have your Google or Facebook or other things or your email or passkey. And so when you choose passkey, this is really designed right now with Apple to be used with your basic account, your home account that you would use, your Apple ID. But you're not going to put your email in. What happens is when you hit passkey, you put the email in that's connected to that passkey, and then it'll pop up a QR code. You take a picture of it, and it'll lock you in. It's using your face as a validation. So it is a very accurate. It's very very. So if you're looking for anonymity, this is not the one you want to use. If you're looking for security for all of your data, this is the one to use. But we're seeing it with B&H Photo and a handful of others, and it's an option. You're not required to do it, although I think that you will see more and more interest in using it more aggressively in the next little bit of time, because it's a very effective way to make sure that if whoever you're talking to is the person you think you're talking to.
Courtney?
So, question for Alex. I never knew how it worked. So, if you're on something that doesn't have a camera on it, does it work?
It's only designed to work if you have your phone. You need an iPhone to use the Apple one. You'll need, it's this.
But it only works with phones, not computers. Then.
Nope. You need to have, and it needs to have for Apple. It's not just it needs to be a phone that's designed to do Face ID. So it is not just, and and for Apple's passkey, it is any Apple device that can do Face ID can do it. So it's whether that's an iPad, the iPhone, et cetera. And typically it'll be hard to do with a computer because you're on the computer when you do it. So anyway, but anything that's doing it's all designed to work around Face ID. So it's saying I truly am who I am now. What Apple does is obscure your actual email from there as well. So you have the choice when you do passkey to say, give the vendor my, a hash with, at iCloud.com. So you're not actually, you don't have to give, you can choose to give your email to the vendor, or you can choose to just obscure it, with a hash that'll change every single time. So Apple is, what this really is doing from an anonymity perspective is that it is slowly taking away web companies, any kind of web interface, the ability to get your email. So they're basically saying, we can sign in and we can account that you are the same person, but we're not going to tell you who that person is. So you are somebody, and that you're the same person that came the last time, but you're going to we're going to give you a different email where it's not going to matter. It's, they can still send you confirmation emails, but they're sending to that hash, and that hash is being rerouted back to the user through Apple's servers, but it's your identity is being obscured. So this is the passkeys are a continuation of Apple's kind of slowly taking away other people's ability to track you. So
basically, it's extracting unique facial data from your face, like the distance between your eyes and your mouth, and so on. And creating a password and converting that into a hash that is then your password on that system.
Not nearly that complicated. Like really? It's making up a hash from thin air. It is then Apple is just simply verifying it with your face, and that how it does that is a much more complicated process that it does there. But it is not, your facial data has nothing to do with the hash that's being delivered to them. It's simply that Apple servers have the connection between you and them, and they're as secure as they're going as anything's going to be.
So in order to get authenticated on something other than Apple,
Google and Microsoft are both working on it. They're both doing
to the Apple servers to get that.
No, there's no way to do it outside of the Apple. If you're an Apple user, this is the way you'll do it. Google's working on their own. The passkey process is going to be is cross-platform, will be used. Apple happens to be the first ones using it, but Google and Microsoft are both working on passkey processes as well. So you wouldn't on their systems. But the bottom line is, the mechanism is that the passkey is a way for someone who holds onto a device that can do facial recognition to validate themselves without actually giving that information, even giving their own personal information back to the owner of that site, which makes people who want that information a little frustrated.
But on the back end, those authentication codes or keys or whatever they're using to store in the database to authenticate you has to then be shared with Microsoft and Google.
It's a typical work. I believe and this is now getting into a place that I'm not sure what all the answers are. So, but I believe it's like a double blind, 256 bit key that's kind of going back and forth. So even they theoretically can't see it, but they can validate it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Steve Gibson did an entire hour a piece on that on his show. So Security Now, so you can probably find that somewhere online.
People will fight it for a while. The problem, I think that what everybody's betting on is the fact, and what Apple's betting on and kind of pushing it forward, is that eventually users won't put up with anything else. Like right now, it's just one of the options and it's being added to those things. But eventually you'll get to a point where people won't sign into your web page if they can't use passkey, whether it's Apple or Google or others. And that really defeats an enormous number of things, like being able to build up email lists that are actually where you actually know the person's email. You can always, and what that leaves the user for is saying, well, I don't want to listen to that person anymore. And then what happens is all those emails that were going to that person, you can still send emails to them, but you just don't have their actual email. So you can't sell it to another vendor. You can't, there's a lot of things that, they can turn it off at any moment. And so it gives the user a lot more power to step away from a sign-in. And it also just gives hackers and, all of hacking is really just social engineering. So the less information you put out on the web, the more secure you are.
My concern is just they finally get away with the click on everything that has a picture of a bicycle in it. And you're sitting there looking at a square that has the basket.
Do it too. When you log into ours, we do it too. And there's not really any, right now, that's the thing that we're, but we're working on getting passkey in our system as well.
Well,
Fair enough.
AI
Next
can
question.
now solve captcha. AI can now solve captchas pretty easily, I think.
Well, I can't.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
AI is better
that's
at
the
it than I
problem.
am.
Is the basket the bicycle, or is the basket not the bicycle?
Yeah, exactly.
It's way too existential. Let's go on to the next question.
Comes in from Cedar Creek, Texas, and Paul Wallace. He says, what do organizations like office hours and production companies need to do to be successful with machine learning? For example, a Cornell study, and he has a link there.
Alex, what do you think?
I think a lot of what we're looking at with machine learning is going to be related to efficiency, of being able to take things that are rote tasks and being able to making them more efficient by by pulling out some of the friction that's there and looking at things that we're doing over and over and over again and pulling that data out, whether we call it AI or machine learning. I think those are the things that we're going to see a lot of. I know that I use it very often, just to pull things out. And I don't know whether, of course we can call it AI, we can call it machine learning. I think AI is a cooler thing to call it right now. But I, for instance, someone sent me something, so I'm going to get rid of the sticker. I think I mentioned it last week, and I just circled it and said, get rid of the sticker, and it just disappeared like it was and filled it in perfectly. Now, it's not that I couldn't have done that, but that would have taken me 15, 20 minutes, and this took me 10 seconds. And those are the kind of things when you start to see those things get pulled together that are interesting.
Nigel.
Yeah, we had a guest on, I don't remember his name, in the office hours at NAB session, and he used a great analogy, which I was really taken with, which was, when you paint a room, the most boring part of painting the room is taping and edging and all that sort of stuff. Painting the walls is the really easy bit and the fun bit. It's all the annoying bits. And I think what his thought, which I thought was very clever, was AI and ML and all those things. It can help us do the taping and the edging and the mechanical bits that aren't the creative bits and leave us to paint the wall. And I thought that was a really good way of saying it.
Yeah. Alex?
Yeah, I think that was Michael Cioni. I think he's been talking about utility AI is what he's been kind of, rather than generative AI, of being able to grab onto it. And a lot of what Strata is doing is just really kind of amazing, because it's saying, I'm going to look at this scene and you can say, when is she drinking wine? Like when is she doing this, or when is he picking up a knife, or whatever it is. And it just grabs all that data, inserts all that metadata, and makes it all something that's something you can actually use. And for anybody who's ever searched through a bunch of things trying to find things, I think that even when you think about even our email, of just going, I emailed Nigel 3 months ago about something. It's 3 or 4 months ago about this subject. Can you show me that email? And it will just immediately expose it, and that's the kind of stuff we're going to see. And I mean, I've done a lot of searches for different emails that I sent to somebody 3 or 4 years ago or 5 years ago. And you can have all these little search functions that you kind of have to tick this way and tick that way. But it's really like trying to unlock a combination lock to figure out which combination of those is going to go find your email. So I think that this kind of work is going to make a lot of that a lot easier.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Gabriela Eshsasau Mestiera from Sault Ste. Marie, and she says, for those that attended Podcast Expo's virtual masterclass on AI and creator tools, what can you learn that you bring back to us? New tools, new techniques, new ideas? Ecamm session was close to an announcement for their Zoom stuff, so that can be exciting.
Interesting. I didn't even know Podfest Expo had masterclasses. Alex?
My only answer is we need to build a schedule.
Yes.
all these conferences. I was like, what conference is this? We need to build a schedule. I think that the hard part for me is, even though I talk about virtual events pretty often, my opinion of most people's execution of virtual events is so low that I rarely go, because I'm so frustrated internally watching them execute the virtual event that I can't watch the show. The cameras and audio are really bad. The format is really bad. There's almost no interaction. And so I get really frustrated watching virtual events, and to a point where I can't go to them, which is ironic, because I'm telling everyone that they should think about doing these, but they need to think about doing them in a real way, not the way. Now, they may have done that here. It's just that my general experience of virtual events has been so bad that I'm not sure. I don't really register them anymore. I think that's a big problem that they have at the moment. So anyway, I didn't get to see it. If it's posted somewhere, then please let us know and we'll take a look at it and see if we can't give you some more opinions.
Does it remind you of all the historic Oklahoma land rush? The gate was opened and everybody went forward.
I think the thing is that we realized, we can get to a lot more people. A lot of times, I refer to it as the 5 nines. There's 99.999% of the world will never get to go to any of these events because they can't get a visa, can't get time, can't get money, to do all the things that they need to do. And so how do you incorporate those? And I think people saw during COVID that there was this huge unlocked, possible community that they could be reaching out to. The problem is that they underinvest in the actual tools. Like when I build a physical event, I have greeters and I have, we figure out what the snacks are going to be and we figure out all those other things. In virtual events, they're like, well, everyone will use their own webcam and open up their laptop and talk. And of course, if you don't put the kind of work into it that you put into a physical event, you're not going to get the same result. And so people they think that they can do everything for 1/100th the price, and then it's 1/100th the show. So I think what we found is that when we put it into a high quality, if you put the kind of work that you're putting into a physical event, if you spend about half what you spend on a physical event, you'll end up with a virtual event that no one's ever going to want to come back to the physical one. But you do have, it's not 1/10 or 1/100th, it's half the cost of a physical event, not a 10th of the cost or 100th of the cost, which is what everyone's working at right now.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Anawahahi Black Bear Marshall in Oahe. She says, a few times pre-show has been heard recently, have been amazing, and had great information not ever contained in the show. As an example of branding identity, what's the reason for not sharing this anymore? The reputation is about people learning by access to behind-the-scenes info.
Alex.
This is really a Sunday question. So we're going to start. We've been kind of gently saying that, hey, you should ask questions about office hours on Sundays. For the most part, we're going to push these to Sundays, and you'll have to figure out how to register into Makana to do that. That's it.
Okay, next question.
Next one comes in from Douglas Carmichael, and he says, a musician friend of mine said most people couldn't care less about what you use. They typically only care about the end result. When hiring creative talent as opposed to technical talent, do you look at their past work, specific skills, or both?
Nigel, what do you think?
So I'm going to give you the model I use, and you can decide whether it fits into your creative talent or your technical talent or fits both. So when I hire people, I look for 3 things. I look for capability, passion, and fit. Do they have the capability to do the job, whether that includes bringing the technology or not? Do they have the passion for the project we're about to do? Are they excited to come in every day? And will they fit culturally with the rest of the team the way they work? And I think you have to decide whatever it is you're recruiting for, whether the capability, passion, and fit are right with that person. Because if one of those 3 is out, they're not going to work.
Fascinating. Alex, what do you think?
100% what Nigel said. I mean, and a lot of times it comes from, the way I usually find people is that I'm in a community doing things like office hours or other things like this. And people, you start to work with a lot of people doing those things, but being involved in the community and getting to know people, almost everybody I hire is someone that I know or someone that I know knows. It's very, very difficult to be hired on any kind of other way. People would love to say that you just put your resume in, and that might happen in a large corporation, but you also have a giant AI system that's sorting through everybody's resumes and making horrible decisions about who actually could work, and they end up getting kind of a middle ground of something that was minimally acceptable that's handed back to the corporation. But to find the right people really to fit in, you really have to be part of a community, and those are whether you're at get-togethers, but most importantly, whether you're volunteering or working on smaller projects or working on larger projects, when you're working with other people, you get to see what they're like. And when I'm trying to hire people, I want to know what they're like while I'm working with them. Our number one way of doing it in Pixel Core was that we had internships all the time. And so we would just see people and we would take a bunch of interns in. We'd get 6 of them at a time. We'd let 3 or 4 of them go, and we'd keep 2 of them, and that was kind of, after their internship or whatever. And for 090, a lot of it is that we just have a very large web between Mark and I. We have a very large web of people that we know or people that they know. And it's always like, okay, we're looking for this right person, and we pull them in. If we work with someone that we like, we very quickly try to get connected to them and talk to them about those things to build that connection, because we know that we want to use them again in Dallas or this person again somewhere else. So you're always actively looking at every team you're working on. But the hardest part is getting from the outside in, and that often takes being like I had a person show up as a PA in DC, Washington DC, and was obviously not a PA. Like one of the more technical people I'd ever met. So I was like, let's keep that guy, and so when we opened our DC office, we had him technically run our office. He then moved to Eurovision, and now he does a lot, managing a lot of Eurovision stuff that's oversight, but he got into that very slowly. But he showed up as a PA with no attitude like he needed to do anything other than a PA, other than we suddenly very quickly learned he could fix a lot more things than a PA could, but outside of that, we wouldn't have known, like it was, and that's how he slid his way into that. And now he's got a great job and doing those things. It took years, for that process. But I think that, that's what it takes, is to know that you're going to have to go in small and then expand out into what you're doing. And you just have to figure out where that entry point is.
I will only add that also remember that everything you do online now is searchable. So if you're going out into the workplace, your reputation, as early as you can learn to try to keep your reputation clean. I mean, don't make the mistakes I did on the old CB simulator of, in the earliest days, getting caught up in arguments and exposing a certain intolerance for other ideas that I shouldn't have. And thank God that platform diminished, and it's probably not back there for people to find it. Don't go looking for me on it.
I had a client bring up something that I tweeted so far back that Twitter couldn't find it. Like I tried to find they were like, well, you said this thing in 2008. And I'm like, 2008? Like this was 2016 or something like that. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, I don't know what I said 8 years ago. There was like 6,000 people using Twitter, like it was, I have no idea what that looks like. And so I've definitely learned, like we talk a lot about not talking about politics and religion in office hours. Definitely not. Those are third rails when it comes to social media. If you want to succeed in business, third rails, unless those are your businesses, third rails. Like you don't need to do that. I will occasionally touch on it if it's applying to what I talk about, and I do it on purpose, and I do it consciously, and I know that I'm tapping the third rail when I do it, but I don't. I'm pretty careful about the fights that I pick like that, because it's just not worth it. It's not worth it.
Yeah, the internet has a very, very, very long memory. Next question.
Next one comes in from Mariali Shusha Miera in Weeblo. What is brand identity, and how can I use it to market myself to this group as a member? When I offered to volunteer for something easy that needed people, I was told to wait for another time. So I guess my brand value is at a low level here.
Try again. Go make sure to fill out. I'm not sure why that would happen. So, I think that one of the things is that for a long time we didn't have a system in which, or a team that was managing volunteers. We now have a growing team that is just there to help volunteers. And so the best thing to do there is go to officehours.global/volunteer, fill out that form, and we will get back to you within a week. And we'll start to give you opportunities of when to, there's a new volunteer meeting that you can attend, and we can start to give you ideas, but there shouldn't be any reason why you can't be part of what
I'll also just say from personal experience, the timing sometimes is important too. Often people, we start building momentum for something we're going to do, but the team's already been meeting for months and things are kind of settled in. So somebody coming in at the end of the process might have a little more time getting an instant, we can fit you in. So just whatever. Let's go to the next question.
Next one comes in from Mike Gaines in Los Angeles, California. With LucidLink's recent outage and customers losing access to their files and losing actual work, should we rely so heavily on cloud-based solutions to production and post-production work?
Important. Alex, what say you?
People lose a lot of files at home too. so I think that the cloud, I think that the building more and more into the cloud is the future. It is not going to go away. And I think that having backups locally, I think, is important. I think that one of the things that makes LucidLink a little bit more challenging is because it is so tied into your hardware, so that you kind of feel like it's local, but it's kind of local, but it's not. And so I think that was a little bit of probably one of their challenges there. But I think that we need to keep on looking at how this is going to get better, probably not pulling away because of a singular failure.
Courtney.
Yeah, in production, the camera original and sound original are gold. Treat them as gold and always keep copies of them locally, even if you're doing all post-production in the cloud, so that those assets are not erased necessarily. I know camera cards need to be erased and reused, but keep a copy of them on a verified local hard drive and keep that in a secure place before you upload things to the web. And at least you'll have your original assets back. If you lose that camera original, then all is lost, and you may not be able to recover it if your cloud copy goes down and disappears. So bear that in mind. It can be, disappearance of cloud access. I tried to sign up for Hulu yesterday. I was telling Nigel this problem. I got to the point that I signed in my credit card, and their credit card registration system was completely down, and may still be down today. It was down all day, so they couldn't sign up anybody all day long. So they're vulnerable to the internet just like everybody. Internet outages just like everybody else.
Nick Jushchyshyn.
I basically tell my students that if they don't have at least 3 copies, that they don't have any copies. So if basically the system is you should have everything that you're doing on a portable SSD that you're carrying around with you, which will eventually get lost on a bus. So you should have a copy at home as well. And that one might die. So you also want to have a cloud copy, which could get deleted or become unavailable. So by having the 3 copies around, chances are at least one of them will be around. It is not impossible and not entirely unlikely that 2 copies will go down. But each one is a different mode, each one's in a different location, and each one has a different way of accessing it. So that's what I try to say. I don't know how many of them actually do it, but my just to be shared, this is my stack of, I call it my stack of Pokemon cards. These are the SSDs that travel with me. So it's a lot of storage.
A lot of data. Boy.
Not as much as is on the cloud.
Let's go to the next question.
Next one comes in from someone named Kent in Madison, Ohio. He says, what is the best hotspot to run the Yolobox Ultra for a couple of hour events to keep a stable connection?
Alex.
Yeah, so this is the Yolobox that he's talking about here. This is the Yolobox Ultra. I haven't had direct experience with it, mostly because a lot of our Yolobox experiences haven't been great. Now they may be slowly growing out of that. I mean, it looks very pretty. The interface looks nice. The website looks great. The build looks better than they have in the past. So it may work better than the ones that a lot of us have used before. So definitely always worth, sometimes it takes some companies a couple builds to get to where they need to be. So we're definitely open to taking a look at it. But what I would do is do the best you can to try to find, if it's bonding, you might want to try to find an Ethernet connection that you add to the cellular connection. I believe it has multiple internet connection opportunities there, and so I think that if you can have one be a modem and one be the house, always try to find a hard line. I can count on maybe one hand or two hands, one hand out of thousands and thousands of events, how many streams I've done that mattered that were done with cellular. And most of them had some little glitches in it. They weren't as seamless as we wanted them to be. So usually the cellular was backing something up and doing those. And so I think that you just want to be very careful of that. And the only time I've done things that mattered have been with a live view, with lots of modems, and using 1 or 2 modems is going to fail. Like it's going to fail. It's going to not be perfect. You just need to know that when you go into it. With 1 or 2 consumer modems, you're never going to get a fully clean signal. It's not the same as a LiveView 800 backpack that we use for office hours. That's a different relationship that they have to those cell providers. It's a different, there's a whole bunch of things that happen that's not the same as you just getting a bunch of modems and sticking them together. So you just need to know that it's not going to be fully effective. You need something, like, I mean, Keenan Campbell has the disaster I want to say disaster toolbox. Disaster group from Keenan Campbell, and he's in our community, and that's the kind of thing you want to start thinking about before you start, or something like a live view. But you got to have someone who's actually managing those connections. If you're going to try this, the ones that are generally the most stable across the United States are AT&T and Verizon. So those are the two modems. When T-Mobile works, it works really, really well. It just doesn't work very well very many places. As someone who has all those modems in my live view, you can always see like which ones are doing well and which ones are not doing well. And so that's been our experience overall. But be careful. Like, don't bid out something that matters on a couple modems on a Yolobox. But if you're doing something that's more low key with people with understand that it could, and just in your managing people's expectations, then go ahead and give it a shot. But those are the things you might want to look at.
Next question.
From Casablanca, Morocco, Ashitaka says, I loved what SourceFabric has been trying to do with Superdesk, Airtime, etc. What's your take about their legacy as they kind of dropped their CMS ambitions?
Yeah, I wasn't familiar with them. I looked them up. I guess a big news organization kind of support group in Europe. Alex, do you know something about that?
So SourceFabric, I've seen it come by a couple times, and they build I believe it's largely Linux solution to help run whether it's newsrooms as well as radio, radio streaming and so on and so forth, and it can be some journalism, some blogging, some radio services. And they put those together. I think that they're open source, and so that's makes it much more available to a lot of folks. I think the nature of what they're building, it takes a little bit of a lift. So what's hard is that the people who would want to jump into this, I think for them, really have to be pretty techie to do it. It's not something that you can just kind of open up on, download, whether it's Windows or Mac, and put it on and just have it work. And I think that that's a real challenge to it's available, but it really is a larger organization with a heavy tech staff to run it. So while it's free, what you're paying is in time and expertise. So I think that's been their challenge. So I've seen some European partners using it. I've actually never seen it used in the United States, and I've never had personal interaction with it.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Liberty White, sometimes panelist and hostess here on Mondays. Any suggestions on a good desk extender? I need some more space on my desk and distance between my monitor and my eyes. It's longer arms.
I won't say what I want to say, which is stop now or your desk will take over your whole office. Go ahead. Courtney.
Well, Liberty, what I use to as my secondary desk when I'm not at this console desk is something like this from the Tiger Dad Overbed Bedside Desk Mobile Rolling Platform. So it's designed to hold a laptop, and it has a mouse platform next to it. And this could be used to extend your desk. Either you could put it behind your desk if you have the depth behind your desk and stick your monitor back onto it. And that tilting thing can go horizontal, and you can lock it in horizontal. So you could use it to put your monitor on at the back, or you could put it in front and put your keyboard and mouse on that and move the rest of the stuff on your desk a little further away, including your monitor. So those are a couple of possible solutions. Otherwise, a keyboard extension, sometimes in a drawer, can be attached to most desks if they don't already have a drawer underneath them in front.
Alex.
I just keep adding desks. I have ideas that someday I'm going to actually build a desk, or I'm going to get something nicer than what I have. But what I have right now is a very nice wooden folding desk that we got from Home Depot that was supposed to be here for a week until I got the real desk that I was going to have. And that was 5 years ago, before COVID, like it was as I was building this little studio. I then found out that desk wasn't large. This is a 72-inch by 30-inch by 30-inch. It's a very typical banquet table, and that's what I'm using here. It's solid. It's wooden. They're nice one. It's a nice one, but it cost us a whopping $110 or something like that. I then needed another one. I was like, I need more space. I needed exactly what Liberty was talking about. So I got a folding desk. It's like a plastic folding desk, and I picked it very carefully because it was in my garage. And so it's one of those ones that folds in half and it unfolds like this, and it's 4 feet, and it's got like kind of a thick, it's one of those ones you'd buy for parties. Anyway, and I unfolded it, and its legs can extend. So it sits about 6 inches above and then tucked right into my 6-foot table here. And then I've got, of course, it filled up with things. And that's what happens. It fills up with things. I've got like random stuff on there, but it holds some monitors and so on and so forth. And then that was great for a little while, but then I needed something to hold like wires and things like that. So I have this is like an Ultra 8 HD Seville Classics or whatever. It's something you build. It's got like a little pegboard on the side and a little drawer and another table. And I added more pegboard to it to even put more cables on it. So all my cables and things are onto one side. And then I got one of those adjustable desks, like a little one. It's like 4 feet long and about 4 or 5 feet long, and it'll go up and down. And I put it over here. And so I mostly use that when Michael Krasny comes in for gray matter, and I can sit over there and run his show. So it kind of stays in that state over there, but it's also a place to sit down, coffee and things like that. So, but it does, so now I have a U, and I think that in most of my life I've built U's. So like I've been building some version of the studio that I'm in now for the last 15 years, and they always end up as a U. For me, I need a way to get out the back, but I usually have some version of, there's some stuff hanging out behind me, and I have things that I can reach all the way around me. So if you have the space to do that, it's where most of us end up.
Nigel?
Yeah, I was going to say I too have a rolling desk, because whenever I think, my main desk is stable. I have an X32 here which is on a rolling desk, because every time I think I know where it wants to be somewhere else. The other thing I found at the bottom of my cupboard one of those telescopic tables we used to put slide projectors on. Remember those in the old days? And I found those very useful because it won't take a lot of weight, but it's very easy to move, and it allows me to reconfigure things pretty quickly.
Courtney.
And one other possible solution, I've been there, done that, is computer glasses. Think about that, Liberty, because they do make special magnifying glasses for the distance between your computer screen, just for use with your computer screen, and they fix your eyesight. As we age, our eyesight doesn't accommodate quite as well, and computer glasses will solve that problem. They're not like reading glasses because you're not this close, you're this close, and they focus at that distance. So see your optometrist. That might be a better solution.
And speaking to that, I had monovision. I had normal cataract surgery as I got older, and I had them set one eye for medium computer distance, and it's been transformative. I can now sit at my desk all day long and work on my computer, and my dominant eye for computer distances takes over. And then when I'm out driving or something like that, I do not have to wear glasses in order to do that too. So and I think for most people it does. It takes a little while to get used to. The other thing is that under Alex's buy once, cry once, this is the desk that I'm still sitting at today. I bought it probably 35 years ago from Middle Atlantic. It cost me well over $1,000 back then, so it's expensive. But I have dragged this around everywhere, and one of the cool things about it on that, I should probably pop back up for a second. On the left side, that is actually a rolling rack that you can take out and position. And as the room sizes have changed over the course of time, my lovely rosewood Middle Atlantic desk has been able to wrap around and go side by side or whatever the room configuration needs. So there are media furniture companies who make things to kind of be flexible in this area. And like I said, I spent that money a long time ago, and boy, it's turned out to be a really good investment for everywhere I've had to work since then. Let's move on to the next question.
Next one comes in from Chuck Hodges in Tulum, California. He says, "It is said that many young techies are fleeing San Francisco in search of better job opportunities elsewhere, but they aren't going to the beloved New Tech Center of Austin either. Where are the future tech workers going instead, and why?"
Yeah, I read this story as well. It was really interesting. So, Nigel, what do you think?
If they're not coming to Austin, then explain all the traffic to me. I think the reality is you have to be a little careful of these stories, and anything that has an agenda. They're not coming to Austin. They're staying in San Francisco. They're moving to Boulder. They're going. Lots of this stuff is people with a with an agenda trying to communicate. I think what's more interesting is to look at this from the other side and say, when people qualify and when people get jobs, what is the dominant decider of where they want to live? And at least when, 1,000 years ago when I graduated, I went to where the jobs were because the jobs were in big cities or places. And I moved to the place which I didn't want to live in particularly because that's where the job is. I think what's much more interesting today is that people are able to pick the city they want to live in. It might be Austin for the music and the life. It might be Boulder. It might be Oshkosh, whatever they pick. And then they try and find the job that allows them to be there. And I think that is a very significant way of working that's really different. I do think, though, there is a catch which people have to be very sensitive to, which is when you can work remotely, the often talked about water cooler, the corridor conversation. If you want a career, at some point you have to be the place where the decisions are being taken. You have to be in the flow. And it is very hard in most companies to be in the flow remotely.
Courtney?
Yes, if you're talking about tech jobs, a large percentage of these tech jobs can be done remotely, as Nigel was saying. So you could telecommute. And so that you could live in a place that's much more affordable than San Francisco or even Austin. So it depends on your budget. If you want to stretch your dollar when you're young and you want to bank some of those big bucks that you're making as a technical consultant, living in a more reasonably priced area, and telecommuting is a solution for that. That may be where a lot of them are going. Or as Nigel says, if they've already made their first billion and just want to move to a ski area where they can, do their work during the day and during the afternoon and go out and hit the slopes at sunset for that nice skiing, they could do that as well. If you're just a working grunt and not one of the privileged few that can name their own price, Arizona's team seems to be a state that's upcoming in technical work because they're building several fabs are being constructed now, but they will be probably a couple of years before they're up and running. But if you're in the construction industry, move there. IBM and TSMC, I think, are both building huge fabs for chip manufacturing in Arizona. So there's another place to look where the real estate might be fairly cheap for the current period of time.
Alex?
Yeah, I think where they're fleeing to is where it's less expensive to live. I think that's, and I think that the problem is that the Austins, the Boulders, many of those are pretty expensive to live in, and they've become expensive. And I think that the challenge really is this change, and I think COVID created this. I think whether it was really a near life crisis or not, or near death crisis for everyone, I think a lot of people took it that way. They had to rethink. They had a lot of time to sit at home and rethink their values, and I think that those values have permanently changed, and I think that the spell has been broken of, you're going to work really hard and give up all your, and I think that that's the hard part. There are still some folks that want to move up the corporate ladder, but I think there's a lot of people that want to have a life and, do what they need to do to keep paying for that life. And I think that used to be looked down on, by a lot of people, sometimes including me, when people would bring it up while I was doing as much work as I was in the, and I think that, but I think that there is a growing number of people that want to, definitely want to do something they love to do, definitely want to feel like they're making a difference, but aren't as worried about trying to become a CEO or the head of a division or something like that. For those who do, Nigel's 100% right. You have to be there. You have to be at whatever the headquarters is, whether that's Mountain View or Menlo Park or whatever. There are all the get-togethers. There's the hallway conversations. There's the meetings. It's a lot of informal stuff that creates that. But for other people who are, happy in what they do, they are like, I know friends that would, they're doing all of their work. And the main thing is if you start to go remotely, you really have to, if you're going to do it remotely, you have to be super effective. You have to definitely be in touch with people. And you really have to think about how you're going to get either in touch with both the people in your company as well as the people in your community. So for instance, office hours, we have lots of opportunities to do that kind of thing, but there's other ways to do that. And there's other people and other companies, but you have to figure out how you're going to be connected to people and how you're going to provide use informally in your industry as well as, and that can be building YouTube channels or answering questions on Reddit or doing other things like that. I got my job at Lucasfilm because I was answering questions on an AOL forum. That is why I got my job. And so being, but the main thing that I think that people, the thing that over the last 20 years that I've noticed the most is people feel like they don't have to give back if they just want to do their thing. Like I just want to do my thing. I just want to, I really like, animation, and I'm just going to animate every day, and then I'm going to go home and do whatever I'm going to do. And they don't worry about people below them or above them. They don't worry about their community. They don't worry about anything. And then they get laid off and they can't get another job because no one knows them. And so the thing is that when, the first thing that I do, and the first thing that I've done in a long time, when I got an interview at Lucasfilm, I went and bought all the, the GAC all the swag that I could carry. I spent hundreds of dollars. I think I was told I spent the most amount of money in any one person and any one just drop in at the Lucasfilm store. And I bought all this stuff and I gave it to all my friends in Denver. Now I did it very naturally. I just think that's a fun thing to do. But those kinds of things are the kind of things that you're connecting with everybody else. You're spreading the wealth out as much as you can. And that can be through little things like what I talked about there. But a big one is spreading knowledge and helping people and answering their questions and being part of that. And you never know when that's going to pay off, but it definitely pays off a lot faster than just doing your job. And you just have to really look at how are you going to improve the lives of everyone around you in that process. And if you're not doing that, you're making your job harder as you try to find something wherever you're going.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. He says, can the background of the Zoom tiles be a moving background or a picture, or is it only a static color?
Alex is going to help us out, and thank goodness, because I have never explored that at all. Alex, have you looked at it?
Probably. It's still in beta. So maybe. So it's still in beta. Right now there's a lot of different ways you can pull it out. Now remember that there's still a lot of things that are moving there. I was trying to get some more information there. And so but I think that remember that you can use so I think we'll talk more about this as Tiles gets more out there. I don't know. I'm actually not certain what I can say and not say there. But I think that what I will say is that I am super excited about Tiles. Like if you look at, we're looking at the next generation of what we do for office hours, and the panel view, the gallery view, I think is definitely going to be designed inside of Tiles. And we're just really excited about how we're going forward with that. I think it's a really exciting way especially for in-room events, but also for our kind of broadcasts where we need to show those things. So keep your eye on it. We'll be talking a lot more about it as it comes out.
Generically, would you say that it kind of unlocks design possibilities for a gallery type view? Is that kind of what it's designed to do?
It's basically, if you want to include, whether it's in a broadcast, if you want to show everybody that's in your event, what Tiles lets you do is you can design the actual look of the gallery. So right now it just looks like a Zoom gallery, but Tiles can change the color of you can round the edges and at whatever radius you want. You can change the colors. You can have it make decisions about who's in those tiles that make sure that they're only active, that they're this, that they're that, they're in certain groups of people within your event. And so all of those things are things that Tiles can allow you to do. So you really design something that looks like it's part of your event. And so that can be something where, hey, we've got a bunch of people watching our show. Like we're in a room of 200 people, but there's 2,000, and let's take a look at some of them. And being able to throw up 5 or 6 windows of galleries of people that are being sorted, and they're all, you can see them all there, but it looks like it's designed with what your event is. It's not just a Zoom window of a bunch of people that are sitting there. It's really like this is a design that looks and feels like the event. Same thing if you're broadcasting. We've got all these people watching. We can jump in and we can look at this gallery of participants, of panelists, of lots of those other things. That's the possibility.
That's very cool. I can see designers really feeling like this unlocks them from the tyranny of rectangles.
It's going to be exciting. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the shapes don't have to be rounded corners. They can be circles. They can be a lot of other things. And so it's going to be, I think there's, and again, it's just getting started. So I think that the ability to be creative with how we show the audience, I think is going to be really interesting.
Nice. Next question.
Comes in from our friend Paul Walthus in Cedar Creek, Texas. He says, AI assistant for Adobe Acrobat. Chat with your doc for $4.99 per month. Would this be enough in your workflow to subscribe?
Courtney, what do you think?
No. It depends on whether you're in the Adobe universe and if you're paying for the cloud. Acrobat is not normal. I don't know if it's normally included with, Acrobat Reader is free everywhere. Whether Acrobat, which you use to compose your Acrobat forms or pages, this interfaces with. But, voice, there's ways to do this for free. Their website, has you being able to inquire about any Acrobat PDF document that's open in Acrobat, so that you could just ask it to summarize this page. But you can do that with the Edge browser. It's Copilot that's built into the Edge browser. It has a voice interface, and you can ask it inquire about any PDF that's open in the browser. So you can do this for free now rather than paying that $5 a month fee to Acrobat. They're just trying to nickel and dime us to death, I think, with this.
Alex.
If you're not on Edge, you might want to think about it because it's something that is there. I am tempted to experiment with it. I don't know if I would need it enough. I don't know if I interrogate enough PDFs to need it, but I could definitely see myself, looking through that. I think that a specialized program might make sense. I just don't use the Microsoft products enough to know like if I would not do it or not. So I think that there's a lot of people that are pretty heavily invested in Adobe Acrobat. That I think, if you look at all the government documents and many, many other documents, and those are companies that have deep connections with, Acrobat, and they're using them in a very complex way. I could see how they would move over to this. I don't know if I would need it. I definitely don't think Courtney needs it. He definitely doesn't. But I think that there's definitely agencies that I think it would be that they'll find it useful.
Courtney, you got a quick follow-up?
Yeah. Now, it depends on how good they make it. If they get the AI to the point that it says, if this is regular Acrobat, create a form for me for personnel, or patient intake for a dentist. And it creates an intake form for you in Acrobat with fillable fields and name, et cetera, credit card, all that stuff based on, common intake forms. If it could do that, if it can get creative for you and create input forms or usable forms, then it would be really handy.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Ashitaka in Casablanca, Morocco. What kind of tips and tricks do you use to automate a rundown spreadsheet? And how can we use numbers and maybe shortcuts to supercharge it instead of Google Spreadsheets?
And Alex is going to handle this.
Templates. All we use is templates. We don't use, I don't know anybody that uses anything other than templates for their different rundowns. There's not, once you start wanting to automate things, then you start going into Rundown Creator or Show Flow or Rundown Studio. Those are the ones you start to do when you start to want to automate things. But I will tell you that 95 to 98% of all shows run on Google Spreadsheets, and not much is automated. When it comes to managing the entire event, a lot of us automate a lot of things, where we're automating the creation of a lot of documents. Really the big thing is tying data from one document to another so that it autofills. That's the big thing.
And do we have time to sneak one more in? Let's do one more.
Yeah, we do.
All right, from Tulum, California, Chuck Hodges says, in terms of brand identity, community definition evolved over time and decisions made to go from a community dedicated to helping others by open tech discussions to one built to make the best show ever and influence industry. Is it better than 4 years ago?
Alex, what do you think?
That's a great question, and we would love to talk about it on Sunday. So this is a Sunday question. If you want to ask questions about office hours itself, we're going to keep them to Sunday so that we can stay on the technical realm on the weekdays. So you'll need to find how to get into Makana and how to ask that question, but we're happy to chew on it on Sunday.
Nice. All right. As you probably heard, if you were here at the beginning of the show, we are just shy of Nick Jushchyshyn coming into the panel to talk to us about what is happening with Epic and Unreal Engine and photogrammetry and all the rest of that. We're really looking forward to the second hour discussion now. So if you have questions on that, please make sure you get them in there so we can deal with them. Also, just a couple of things typically coming up here on our Thursday show, or on our Thursday show. After the show, directly, the Isadora Lab takes place. Mimo Live with Oliver Breidenbach also happens every Thursday. So if you're interested in those topics, please stick around right after the show. The next 2 hours will be equally fascinating, we hope. Also, don't forget that your questions continuously drive this show. So we appreciate all that you do for making this happen every day. And if you're not in the system, please take the time to get in the system, particularly if you get into Makana in the back end that allows you to not just deal with questions, but vote on them up and down. That's very powerful. We'll be right back. Alex, you're up.
Oh, I am up. I was sitting there waiting for Bill. I was like, what is Bill doing there? And then it was like, anyway, welcome back. And we're going to be talking about, these are the latest updates in the Epic ecosystem. And I'm going to throw it right to Nick and have him give us a little update of what's happening here.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, so last week on Tuesday, Epic released their latest version of their flagship engine, the Unreal Engine. So that is now Unreal's 5.4.0. And that has a huge pile of new features, and I think the ones that are most interesting for the office hours audience in general are the motion graphics tools. So there are a whole new set of tools.
And this is Avalanche? Yeah. Known as Avalanche?
It had been called Avalanche while it was in development. That was its kind of undercover code name. Officially, it is now Motion Design. So, not quite as shiny as the word Avalanche.
I think Avalanche is a great name for it. So,
I don't work for them, so I don't know what's going on. But the feature set is awesome. So they've designed a whole new set of basically interfaces within the engine so that you actually end up feeling a little bit more like you're working in something like After Effects or Motion or Photoshop. There's a lot of familiarity in terms of building up layers of imagery for creating.
So you don't feel as much like you have to be a coder to open this up. Once you get into this interface, it's very much feels like a design program.
The design is definitely intended to feel much more friendly to those that are familiar with motion graphics tools. It's got a lot more than something that like After Effects has. It's more akin to Cinema 4D when you get into the three-dimensional tools, but it tries to keep as much of that easily accessible as possible. I think there's really no escaping that, to really unleash the power of it, that you want to dig in deeper and get into the three-dimensionality. But as a main example is the cloners and effectors, right? And this is something that Cinema 4D has had for quite a long time. People use Houdini for these kinds of things. Unreal Engine has had an extremely robust particle engine that could absolutely handle this, but it did feel like coding. For Shake and Nuke users, lots of node graphs involved and connecting mathematical values in order to get the things that you wanted. Whereas now, with the motion design tool set, it gives you a user interface for that where, okay, I want a honeycomb arrangement of particles, and I want the particles to look like hexagons, and I want them to be beveled, and I want them to be red. Moving on. And I want an effector that makes them bounce or something like that. So all of these things that have been existent in the tool set for well over a couple of years, are now very accessible because now the tool set is sliders and drag and drop and things like that. So the other thing about it is that it leverages Unreal Engine's real-time capabilities. So as you build out these motion graphics, sure, you can render them and then use them in something like DaVinci Resolve or Premiere or anything like that, Final Cut. But you actually have a live playout feature set. So you can do a rundown sheet, give page numbers for every beat that you anticipate for your live stream, your broadcast. You can program out all your lower thirds. You can create a template and then populate that template over and over again and alter the colors, alter the playout, etc. And each level of graphics can have its own layer. So as a lower third layer comes in, the lower third that's in place is going to say, "Oh, I need to get out of here."
And are you
So
able to
all
show
that's in
this?
there.
Do you have any of that up that you can?
I can show some of it. Actually, I just put out some videos on YouTube about it, so I could probably scrub through those a bit. And that's Kai. Could we go ahead and share screen to Zoom? We want to share the computer monitor. Yeah, thanks. And is that what we're sharing? What are we sharing? You guys can see motion design here?
Yep.
We can.
Okay, great. So this is kind of my intro into the motion design toolset, and what's happening here, and hopefully you can, let me just make sure that you can see my mouse, because I always forget to turn that part on my sharing tool. Yep, mouse pointer is not, there we go. So now you should be able to see my mouse. So essentially what I did to put this together was I drew the shape of a shield in a Adobe Illustrator type tool, and exported that as an SVG file, so just a standard SVG. And so now we can import those, and that made the shape of the shield, and I was able to do a quick Boolean effect to make it three-dimensional. Inside the shield, there's
and,
kind of...
And be clear, you're using a Boolean inside of Unreal.
Exactly. Yeah. So basically, the only thing I drew as an outline in the the vector tool was the outline of the shield and made it a solid. And that was it.
Are you able to extrude SVGs or EPSs or anything else inside of Unreal?
Absolutely. Yep. So you can extrude them and bevel them and animate them. So if you do have a more complex logo, each curve in that logo set can be a separate element, and you can animate them independently of one another. You can
and this is all part of the new motion graphics, new motion design
all built
tools.
in.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yep. And so this was kind of my first demo of the tool set, and the design is that the arcs in the background is just a single curved piece of geometry that is cloned vertically and then that cloner is told, spin those things a little bit so that when they play out, actually, I guess I should be able to play this really quickly in here. Here's what it looks like when it plays out. So that is what appears to be pretty complicated, but it's actually really, really simple. There's a piece of text, there's a shield, there's a couple bits of geometry here. The cloner is something where I actually made a little jewel shape, and I made sure that one side of it was an emissive light and the other side was kind of this automotive red paint. And so it's got what's called an effector. It's basically a sphere that's moving in as the animation plays out that rotates those, and that sphere just kind of moves around, and as it moves over that shape, those various pieces kind of rotate and expose different sides. So so this is actually not particularly complicated. And there's my channel is Pixel Prof, and there's a whole series of 8 videos that really breaks this down step by step so that you could get started into it. That is the
and then one of the things about the motion design also, because it's in Unreal, you can build it out almost like a game, right? So while you can have in a lot of ways, you still have all the Unreal tools, and so you're basically able to build all these designs, but building an interface, for instance, that interfaces with those designs and making those, like that's all still something that someone else could build, and I think that Unreal has built some of that for us now, right? They've started to build, there's some interfaces that are available to us to run these.
Absolutely. If I go into one of those interfaces is it's called their rundown. So I did a kind of an overview of that recently, and of course, I've got an ad to sit through. Sorry about that. 3 seconds, 2, 1, and here we go. So this in the background here is the rundown tool. Why does it have so many ads? Sorry about this. There we go. I can try and find that screen here. Here we are. Okay. So this right here is the rundown tool, and there is a preview screen, and these are the various pages that have been set up for a given broadcast, and they're running the lower thirds graphics that I have. So the way this is set up right now is the computer that is running Unreal in this example has a Decklink Duo board in it, and so that has a total of 4 SDI connections, and I'm using a pair of them for one is fill and one is key, and that pair is going into an Atem Mini. So for my video playout here, my Atem Mini is receiving a feed that's I run my camera through an Ultimatte, so I've got my interface screen as a background, but the fill and key is providing the lower thirds at the bottom of the screen, and that's just going into the Atem Mini straight out of the computer in Unreal Engine. And aside from all the regular motion graphics things that you might expect, we have all the power of Unreal available to us. So one of the things I tried out with this is there's a little flag up here. We'll let this fill out the screen here. I added a 3D character animated to knock this down, kind of like the sports robot. There we go. So he just comes up there and knocks it down, and so everything that we can do in Unreal Engine we can now incorporate into motion graphics if we like. But again, we've been given this kind of whole new interface that's very familiar for anyone that's been in tools like After Effects and Photoshop.
And what industries do you think are going to be jumping on this initially?
So this is absolutely intended for broadcast, live events, live streaming, as well as in-person events. Mm-hmm. So this is not limited to just sending out an SDI signal on a decklink board. This can actually output directly to your GPU outputs. Mm-hmm. So this could be used to feed LED walls. It could be used to fill out scoreboards and other kinds of displays. So if you're going to do a hybrid event that's both live and that's in an arena, but you're also streaming that, all of these different output channels could be leveraged. It's also designed to be scalable, so this can synchronize with other machines. So you could have one machine that's in charge of LED walls, another machine that's graphics for the location-based video playouts, and another machine that is for the streaming playouts, and they can all synchronize with one another. You can update assets and broadcast them or synchronize them out to each other, and then the playout can be synchronized. And all of that can in itself be remote controlled using tools like OSC, so you can use whatever traditional tools
and not just OSC but DMX, right? I mean,
exactly.
All of those things are stuff that Unreal can see.
It can receive and transmit DMX. Absolutely. And the other thing about this is because Unreal is in a full virtual three-dimensional environment, you can actually previs your entire show, both the in-person part as well as the broadcast. And a little bit of that ties into the other new thing that happened with this release is that Epic did alter their licensing terms for entertainment broadcast solutions. So in the past, there had been no charge at all if you were not shipping Unreal Engine code, meaning you weren't compiling a video game or VR experience and you were selling that executable. If you were making a television show or live broadcast, there was no licensing fee. There is now I think it's $1,800 a year if your annual revenue is $1 million or more. So if you are an educator, if you're a teacher or a student, it is still free. If you're a hobbyist, it is still free.
So and to be clear here, you can build your own tools. You can do all this. You can download all of these tools, put everything together here, and then basically everything that everything that's available for Unreal can be used as long as you're not making more than $1 million a year doing it. And so. So this is if you're, I think it's a really great business model if you're big enough to be able to absorb that. But I think that what they're nodding to is the fact that the very small percentage of, what they're trying to do is build an ecosystem, an ecosystem where there's lots of people building things. There's lots of people buying things because there's still a marketplace that you need to buy from. So there's other ways to make money if you're a small fry, making less than $1 million. There's other ways to make money. But most importantly, what you're doing is by creating that ecosystem. One of the things that we found with software is that, when people make a decision about what software they want to use, whether it's a compositor or an editor or a 3D package, they're not thinking just about what is the best package. They're thinking about who can they get to use that package, and so you're looking for this kind of artist or this kind of artist. And so I definitely see Epic looking very carefully at the possibility. How do I have all of those things work? And I think that that's a really interesting way to approach it. So I think that I can see how, again, the challenge is always with Unreal has always been the interface. You open up the interface and a lot of people kind of glaze over. Like there's a lot of things here. So getting that interface to feel more like motion graphics. Do you know if have they done anything to address? One of the things that Epic did a long time ago was address the 2997 issue. A lot of stuff like Unity really works in whole frames, and that's great when you're doing interactions. But it's a little less straightforward when you're doing when you're trying to integrate with broadcast. So they fixed that. Then the other thing that a lot of us ran into was that there's a little bit of aliasing going on, and it sounds like they've started to address some of the aliasing issues to make it much more broadcast ready. Is that right, Nick?
Correct. So they've actually updated the playout particularly for video. That was one of the things that really stood out. They had a temporal anti-aliasing system that would result in kind of ghosting when you're playing out frames for video and such. And so this new version has an update that addresses that. And there's a few different options when it comes to anti-aliasing output, and so you can select between those. So that has been addressed. And when it comes also into the pricing model that you were speaking about earlier too, is that in the right kind of artist and all, one of the tools that's integral to all of this is the reality capture photogrammetry tool, which up until last week was always a purchased model. You could either buy a license or you could use what they called pay per input, where
and I have to admit it was too much. Like I think it was kind of a disaster. This is reality capture, right? So this is their reality tool. And I beta tested it. I was like, this is really cool. And I could not figure out how the token thing was going to work. And I just couldn't figure out and I was like, I don't really want to commit to this because I don't understand how this is going to scale and how much I'm going to end up paying. And I think that a lot of us just kept on using whatever we were using rather than trying to use reality capture because of this super weird business model, in my opinion, that they had with the whole token purchasing thing. And now it's free, right? I mean, if you're not making more than $1 million, it's a free application.
Exactly. And if you are making over $1 million, it is included in the $1,800 seat license that you would be getting for Unreal. So that seat license includes Unreal Engine, Reality Capture, as well as Twinmotion, which is essentially an Unreal Engine derivative that is tailor-made for architectural design and interior design. So it kind of takes the engine and packages it in a way that would be familiar for architects and interior designers. So all of those are included in that license. All of them are completely free if you're individual and your revenue per year.
And Nick and I will be covering this in a near future event. Because we have to cover this now. I think we've talked about it in the past, but we'll have to bring it back on and get people off the ground again to show how to use it. Now that I think more of us will use it because the business model makes more sense.
Sure. Yeah, and it's accessible to everyone. Now, I guess Reality Capture, I think that only runs on PC. Unreal Engine does operate on both Mac and PC. Right. The motion graphics tools do work on Mac. I have it on an M2 MacBook Air. Some of the features don't work, so you can't tie into the Blackmagic outputs, for example. But
I would say I would tell people that if someone asked me, what should I get if I'm going to use Unreal, a PC, with a 4000 series card, I think is probably, that's, I got on Nick's suggestion, the one we ran for NAB, we got a little Asus, it was about $1,800, I think. And it was it's like the heaviest little box. I can't quite get to it from here, but it's like the densest little box, and it doesn't do everything. It doesn't have a lot of some of the outputs and so on and so forth might be a little limited, but as far as learning, I think it's a pretty good device.
Yeah, I mean, that box has a 4070 in it, and so that's more than enough power for what you would be doing with motion graphics for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
And, again, using something like Reality Capture, and this is something I've done here, is done photogrammetry of a venue. So like our basketball stadium, for example, capturing all the LED screen installation locations, as well as the seating and the flooring and all of that sort of thing, and then bringing that result into Unreal Engine. And now I have that 1:1 to scale, and I can visualize any type of production that would go into that location. And we've taken that photogrammetry as a template and applied clean geometry to all of those LED screens, for example. And so now virtually we can populate all the playouts of all of those LED screens and view how things will work, including the desks that are in sidelines and things like that. So it's all available. And then we can also use that then as a guide if we want to program augmented reality motion graphics over the broadcast, because we can test different camera positions and basically pre-make the graphics to fit everything that's already there.
Yeah, absolutely. We got a couple questions rolling in. Let's go ahead and jump to those questions.
All righty. First one in from Lee Mindell in Richmond, UK. He says, I'm buying a new car, and he has a link to the MG Cyberstar. I don't know how you're going to pronounce it, but in the end. Reports are that the infotainment system will have Unreal Engine 4.0. What will that be used for?
Courtney, do you want to add to that question?
I have a guess, and we'll let Nick, if he knows, tell us exactly what he thinks. I think it's going to be used, since it's not out yet. It's just a prototype that they've been putting out. It's kind of a supercar. This is what the interior looks like. You're not sharing my screen. Sorry. But anyway, it's. I think they're going to use it to use a heads-up display for navigation. That's probably the most logical thing. It doesn't say anything in the article about any type of self-driving capability. So I think it's going to be used in the nav system to show you directions as a floating arrow over a camera image out the front of the car in 3D space. Maybe it'll be smart enough to show you cross traffic coming in and things, or an overhead view of the car with other cars around you for parking, things like that.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, it's a two-person roadster kind of form factor. So I think this is marketed to the young people out there who will be buying a cool first car. And access to something like Unreal Engine makes perfect sense. Somebody who's aware of that would be able to configure their dashboard and all the rest of the displays pretty easily, exactly the way they want. I noticed when I was reading about this that it can be ordered in left or right drive, depending on whether you're in the US or Europe. And that means that if you decide that you want certain displays interior to you or on the outside, you should be able to pretty easily, I would imagine, go in and customize the interior display space exactly what you want if you have Unreal Engine skills.
Nick, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing is that Unreal Engine is, it's not unusual for it to be used for HMI, human machine interface. And so on my screen share right now, I'm sharing out the Unreal Engine website has an entire dedicated page for HMI. And there are quite a few applications in automotive space. So it's not unusual for I think, if I remember correctly, I can't remember if it's General Motors or Ford, but also Rivian uses Unreal Engine to make the interfaces for the touch screens inside the cars. So this is where you get your 3D models and all of that sort of thing. So as the car customer, you probably aren't going to, open up Unreal Engine itself in the car and customize that interface. But the fact that the automotive company has used Unreal Engine to create the UI and for the touch screens and the dashboard and all means that you can have some really dramatic and dynamic graphics, and it can all be interactive. And so that's usually how that ends up getting used. Trying to think of a few other places where I've seen Unreal Engine used in HMI. I actually know of that there are warehouse robotic systems that use Unreal as their main user interface to monitor the robots going around there.
And the reality is that the making interfaces is hard, making graphics is hard to do from scratch. And so why write it all when you can have somebody else who's already built all those libraries and made all that stuff work and has a lot of those interactions all built? It makes a lot of sense. Now, a lot of folks have been using other interface design systems to do that. Apple has its own, Google has its own. And so this is another option for how to build that out and, use up, and a lot of these, Unreal is designed to work on more embedded systems as well. It can be, you can give it the limits that it needs to make that actually happen. So it'll be really interesting to see, how far this kind of thing goes. Let's go to the next question.
All right. Next question comes in from Dave Troutman in Edmonton, Canada. Is the Unreal Engine integration into Zoom primarily an environment for Zoom layouts, or is there more to it?
Go ahead, Nick.
So there is more to it because the Unreal Engine plugin also has access to anytime someone responds with a reaction button, so raising their hand or hitting the party button and those types of things, as well as access to the Q&A and the chat activity. So all of that activity can now be integrated visually into the presentation. So it's more than just placing the video playouts into a 3D environment, but even that alone is a pretty dramatic change to the experience. And by integrating the communications, the chat, the reactions, now you can really connect remote audiences with in-person audiences. So I'm really excited about the possibilities for this with hybrid digital-first events, because they can be designed into an environment that's not just a bunch of tiles.
Yeah, we were really successful with it at NAB, and I think that it is just an environment that you can call in and start applying things to the different panes. And so it's not really, it's just Unreal Engine that happens to be able to apply Zoom things to it and grab a bunch of data as well as video from Zoom to put into those things. And so the ability to kind of openly design things, especially like, for instance, for tile, like I think one of the things that Zoom is really focused on is doing what makes sense on each application. Tiles uses so many graphics engine systems inside of the Mac that it I don't know, but I don't think it'll end up on the PC anytime soon. But the PC has Unreal Engine. So you have kind of an opened area to design a lot of how it looks and feels. I think even if you're not projecting it to a wall, just designing something really cool that you can show in your, on your show, and being able to animate between different tile looks and so on and so forth. Even if it's only like a 2.5D, it doesn't have to be as complicated. There are so many things that we've done in super sources, for instance, inside of an Atom switcher or vMix or other things, that we could simply go to a Unreal Engine and be able to build something that was really cool, that might have a really complex mortise around it and be rotating and moving. I can see there's a couple clients that we have that would love for us to have this like boom, and it all appears in 3D and it moves around. So it's something that I'm going to drag Nick into conversations about as we start to design, like how do we, because again, like imagine beyond just what we did with it, which is a fairly static thing. It was brand new. So we were just like, well, how do we use this? And we're trying to figure out the language when we did it at NAB. So if you go back and look at some of the behind the scenes, most of it was just for the people that were there. But imagine being able to have, I've got a 4-up and I want to go to a 3-up, right? Even you may even see us start to use it somewhere in office hours where those 4-ups and 3-ups could be theoretically generated all in Unreal Engine, and so so that those things are spinning out, like instead of being like 3 people and want to go to 4, the 3 go whoosh, and the fourth one comes flying up from the back and pops up. And those are all things that we could do if we wanted to, inside of Unreal, and it'd be pretty interesting, experience there. Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
I was just going to say that to me, it feels very similar to when the Mac operating system first came out. Up until then, I'd been primarily a DOS programming user, and so there was always, we were fixed into, you had to type in text commands, you had to have various batch files to launch different things, and there was a different driver for every different little tool that you wanted to do. And I feel like the traditional Zoom experience is that for remote communications, and now we have this graphical interface that we can work with. And the Mac came in with rounded corners, and oh wait, you don't have to program, or you don't have to type in a command. You just double click on a picture, and then I can use this mouse thing and I can move my hand to create a brush stroke. This is crazy. I feel like we're on the cusp of that now we have that tool set to create these remote experiences that can be anything that we imagine. And it's not even just the visual presentation of where things are positioned and located, but how they can be moved and manipulated. So for myself in a teaching environment, I can envision being able to remote control the Unreal Engine environment using my iPad. So that's a built-in functionality with Unreal Engine, is that it has a built-in web server, and I can share that to any handheld device. And so if someone in the Zoom connection raises their hand, I can look over at them and I can tap them on my handheld device, and on the 100-inch screen in front of me, their tile moves into place smoothly, and everybody else is still visible, but it's all been rearranged because now someone, by raising their hand, now has the floor. So these kinds of interactions just haven't been possible and haven't been fluid before, and now they're all possible.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Next question.
Next one comes in from Douglas Carmichael. He says, do you think the motion graphics rundown features will bring more traditional broadcast graphics professionals like XPression operators to the Unreal Engine? Or is it an extension of the traditional Unreal Engine workflow and talent pool?
So yeah, I was just going to say that initially it's more of an extension. If you're an XPression operator, I don't know what the motivation would be to jump into Unreal Engine unless, either a supervisor is doing that to you, or, you plan to be, in this industry for a very, 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 very long time, and, you want to learn the latest, greatest tools. So there's two motivations there. I think initially this definitely opens up the availability of a rundown tool set to anyone and everyone. So anyone who is doing any kind of live streaming already, they can have access to the software, and they can design their own layouts or bring in templates, and then they can use the rundown, and so they can develop that experience. Traditionally, Unreal Engine has been used for many, many years. I can remember Fox Sports broadcasts using it back in 2018, at least. And it has been an extension of the other traditional broadcast tools, and so it's responding to the rundown commands from something else. And so I think that it'll gradually make its way into areas that are traditionally occupied by other tools. It's not unusual, by the way, for broadcast solutions providers to take the Unreal Engine source code, which is freely available on GitHub, and create their own broadcast wrapper around it. So this is places like Zero Density and Pixotope and Eximmetry. There's any number of these solutions that offer Unreal Engine 3D functionality within a broadcast packaging. But I think that what's really new here with Unreal is that it's more accessible now for designers. So if someone has been a motion graphics artist that has been in Cinema 4D or in After Effects or Photoshop for that matter, as soon as you open up Unreal, it's just an alien world, and you just want to close it and have some Tylenol or something. Now, and there's a familiar interface available, and it's approachable, and you can create those graphics and then use that same tool to play them out.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Eric Hers in Hartford, Connecticut. He says, what are the pros and cons of various remote desktop options for controlling Unreal in the cloud?
Have you done much of that, Nick? Running Unreal in the cloud?
I don't do a lot of that personally, but it is possible. It is doable. We have, during the lockdowns, we used a solution called Perforce to basically open up access to all of our lab computers for remote use off of campus. Was it Perforce, or there was another? Perforce was our version control software. There was another tool that we were using that allowed for remote control. I know that AWS does have Unreal Engine solutions. Azure does as well. So all of those work. Of course, with any of these cloud solutions, you do have all of the IP VPN tunneling issues to potentially resolve, right? So if you're going to use NDI as your video solution and you want to get your video up to your cloud server, you've got all of your internet bandwidth, bottlenecks to deal with to get that video stream up to that. And then it's got to process it, and it's got to get through all the different firewalls. And then whatever the result is then needs to be piped back to you at your location. So anything that you would deal with any traditional, streaming type of a service, you'll have to do. But you might be in a scenario where you want to feed multiple video feeds up to that cloud machine, and then they need to get back to you. So you're just kind of multiplying the amount of data that you need to pipe out there.
Next question.
Next question comes in from Paul Buchanan in Columbus, Ohio. He says, when you talk about using Unreal in event or broadcast workflows for 3-ups and 4-ups, etc., how do you deal with the delay of the engine? Does everything then have to be in Unreal?
I think you would have to do it that way. So, so that's all stuff we'd have to figure out. But there might be a delay of a frame or two that could throw off your audio sync. So as you run it through, and we don't know what that is yet. So when I said we could do it, and we're going to play with it a little bit. But I think that those are things that we have to kind of take into account, is that there is a delay of going through the engine that will be a couple frames, most likely. So you may have to live completely in Unreal if you decide you want to do that. So that also leads to why you may also want to do a lot of things. You have that's where a lot of the graphics work well. But if you have people talking, you have to think about what that delay is in and out of that interface. Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
And it depends on how you're going to employ it as well. So if you're going to be using it as your motion graphics tool for your lower thirds and the bugs and the different panels that are coming in, it's going to work like any other system. You're not really interfering with the operation of your constellation that's doing the video switching and audio management. So that can operate just as you would in concert with the video hardware. And that goes the same for if you want to use it as a component of something like a super source as well. That again, the super source compositing can be happening in your real-time, dedicated video hardware, and then Unreal is just providing the graphics that are going in and around that. Yeah. Also, we tend to integrate Unreal with our Airtime constellations using Ultimat units, and Ultimats also have a built-in delay function to them. In fact, when we were setting up today, we discovered by accident that our delay's cranked up. So we had to fix that. But so there's video hardware solutions to that where you don't need to worry about addressing the delay within Unreal Engine itself. That can be handled downstream in the video production pipeline.
Thank you very much, Nick. Thanks for your time. Thanks for the introduction. We really appreciate you giving us a little overview of this. Of course, this is the introduction. We're going to be talking a lot more about it. Nick and I are looking at doing some labs, and we'll be talking more about these things a lot, because I think it's really exciting, where we're going with all of this, and I can't wait to look at it a little bit deeper. So thanks, Nick, for your time. Thanks to the panelists for the time that you had here and answering questions in the first hour, being part of the second hour. And thanks to all of our online folks asking all the questions. So our producers who are asking questions from around the world, both in the first hour and the second hour, we really appreciate your all of your questions. Make sure to ask the questions that are more pertaining to us, to internal, is Sunday. Sunday's a good day to do it. We've been a little loose about that in the past. We're going to tighten that up a little bit. And so Sunday's really the time to discuss what you want us to talk about related to office hours. But we're sticking with technical questions during the week. So anyway, or industry questions at least. So definitely looking forward to those. Also, make sure to ask those questions. Make sure to ask the questions one at a time. So if you give us a list of questions, if you see a bunch of question marks in your question, then know that if you're putting in the QR code, it probably won't get here. so it's one question at a time. So a barrage of them will not work, and make sure that your questions are well formed. We traveled 53,000 miles today, 85,000 kilometers, and that is 418 million bananas for scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump into After Hours.
Real bananas. Nick, is it still free for Unreal Engine, or have they moved to their subscription model yet?
It is free if you're not making $1 million each year in revenue. Yes, so it remains free.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Your picture looks better and better every single time, Nick. You keep on adding little bits and pieces and lights and all those other bits, and it's great.
Thanks. This week's background was brought to you by Ultimat.
Very good.
All right. Nice green screen.
That's good. All right,
Purple.